Hello, everybody. All right, so yeah, Rick is in Saskatchewan this week. So he did message me back though that he'll be here in about a half hour. As usual, we're just waiting around for people to show up. So hopefully, everybody's having a good weekend, having a nice relaxing weekend. Let's see. So it'll just be a few minutes while we, of course, wait for more people to show up. Wait for some panelists to show up so we can get some discussion going. So, anyways, yeah, things have been kind of slow in the world of niche this week, of course. Um, we did go over kind of some of the new, some of the newer indie stuff, according to, according to, um, you know, yeah. So as we are waiting for more people to show up, of course, hopefully people will show up soon. Anyways, yeah, as I said, some slow. It's been kind of a slower week. Was a bit of that dust up between Matt Walsh and Jeremy Hambley, the court ordering. We might go over that a little bit tonight. That might go over the full article this time. Um, let's see. Also, of course, with IDW is apparently delisting itself um, on um, on the New York Stock Exchange. That said, we're just wait. As always, of course, if you guys can like and share the screen, see if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated. Um, also, if anything we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. Hey, JR, just let's see. Can you review the new Chris Chan material about him being in public, perhaps in a halfway home? No, I really can't because I don't. First off, I don't even know who Chris Chan is. Don't really care who he is. Um, quite honestly. um, Only things I've kind of heard about him is that he's kind of controversial in some respects. So, but other than that, don't really know a whole lot about him. Therefore, I can't really um, say much about him. All right, there we go, Lily. All right. Oh, hey, Intense Weds. Greetings. Hey, man. How you doing? All right. So, yeah, we're just waiting for more of the panelists to show up. um, so before we get started with anything, as I was saying, there's only like a couple of, I guess the two bigger stories, as I said, was the whole thing between Jeremy Hambley and Matt Walsh, and then IDW delisting itself from the New York Stock Exchange. Let me see. I just see if I got any replies yet. All right, so I guess since nobody else is here, if there's anything you guys have on your mind in the world of niche, that's like anime, cartoons, comics, manga, pro wrestling, feel free to ask questions and or comments. Um, so hopefully people will be coming in soon here. Like I said, I'm just waiting on some panelists, somebody to kind of bounce stuff off of. So, um, otherwise, it'd just be like any of my shows during the week. ah, let's see. Well, I was hoping RJ would be here, of course, so he could give his impressions on what we read this past Friday. I guess I could talk about that. We did go over some interesting stories this past Friday. You know, uh, is RJ's one of them. RJ is somebody who comes in, once in a while. He's just been busy lately. That's why he hasn't been on in the last few weeks. Um, Rick would already be here, of course, but he went to a convention in Saskatchewan. So, but he did say he'll be here in about a half hour, and then I guess just wait for Metal and Terry and who else shows up. Sent the links out, but you know how it goes. Sometimes things happen. Anyways, let's see. Let's see what else is going on. Well, I do know that I guess Toonami's kind of in a state of flux right now. They just debuted a new show, Unicorn Festival. It's not one I'm particularly interested in, but they did a full hour premiere last night, and I'm gonna continue it in the midnight Eastern time slot. So, starting next year, I think they're gonna have Unicorn Festival, and then Primal. You know, then Food Wars, Shugeki no Soma, One Piece, Naruto Shippuden, and I guess some reruns of some of the more recent My Hero Academias. So that's all that's going on Toonami right now. Are there any? So I know Intense or JR. Are there any like animes or cartoons that you're watching of interest? And I'm the unknown stuntman, makes Eastwood look so fine. And I'm the unknown stuntman, makes Eastwood look so fine. Huh. Nope, sorry. Let's see. I'm slow on the uptake of anime. I am starting Chainsaw Man. Yeah, that one's said to be pretty popular. That one's pretty good. You got some horror elements in it. I know that early, when it first came out, there was some controversy because people were, even though the protagonist is, I think, something like 16, 17 years old, and the lady he becomes employed to is, in her early 20s. People are already trying to make it sound more insidious than it is. Um, But anyways, let's see. I'm gonna check some stuff here. So I'm gonna mute my mic for a moment because I'm gonna try to see if I can get somebody, but I'm still gonna keep my pic. So you'll see me talking, but I'm just gonna mute my mic for a moment here while I. Yeah, I was just calling RJ to see if I could reach him, but he's not picking up. So, let's see now. What else? Let's see. I also covered the Indie Comic Showcase this past week. There are some interesting titles there. Um, um, let's see now. Gummy bears bouncing here and there and everywhere. Find adventure that's beyond compare. They are the gummy bears. They are the gummy bears. Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur. Might solve a mystery or rewrite history. DuckTales. Ooh, you've been waiting, I've been waiting. DuckTales. Ooh, you've been waiting, I've been waiting. DuckTales. And there's a stranger out to find you. I'm on to some DuckTales. Ooh. Well, aside from Chainsaw Man, JR is um did you have any like cartoons that were particularly interesting to you when you were growing up? I know one of the ones that I liked a lot was Super Friends. It was actually my love of Super Friends that actually got me interested in comics and doing the historical comic retrospect. Castlevania. Oh yeah, that one came I think late '80s, early '90s. Although that's not from growing up. That's probably when you were a little older. I take it then. Yeah, that was a whole big franchise of video game, games to television and all that. Yeah, I mean there were a lot of I was born in '75, so there was a lot of stuff in the '80s. Super Friends is probably my favorite of everything, but I watched a lot of Marvel stuff too, like Spider Man and all that. I watched a lot of the syndicated stuff they'd have from the '60s. Um, the only okay, anime is spelled just so you know, anime is spelled ANIME, not A. I watched as a kid was that comic that was called Battle of the Planets, G Force, and maybe even another. Yeah, that one. Okay, so the original name of that particular particular anime you're talking about was Science Ninja Team Gatchaman. It originally came out in Japan back in like 1972. And then in 78, Sandy Frank Productions was the one who adapted it for English audiences here in the States, but they tried to make it a Saturday morning cartoon. And then the G-Force version came out in the late 80s from Turner. And then, of course, ADV got hold of it in the mid-2000s called under the name Gatchaman. So that's all the different names it went by. I have a print of the G-Force logo. Yeah, those are pretty popular, too. Yeah, I watched the Battle of the Planets version. I'm not the thing is what you have to understand too is that the Battle of the Planets version is a very kind of watered down edited version of the original anime because they literally cut out like a third of the content. So if your average show runs about 24 minutes, okay, they literally cut out 8 minutes. That the Seven Zart 7 character that was actually not part of the original cartoon. You probably figured that out when you watched the G-Force version because when Turner did the G-Force adaptation, they reintegrated everything back into it, and then of course so did ADV back in the mid 2000s when they brought it back as Gatchaman. So yeah, so another show that they kind of really mashed up a bit was if you remember Voltron. Voltron was actually a combination of two animes. Beast Go Lion, that was the lion version of Voltron, and then Dairuger 15. Those were actually completely separate animes that they actually combined into one show, giving them some form of connection to it. So, and then of course, Robotech was an adaptation was a English adaptation of the Maycross series, and that was said to be somewhat, a couple of different animes kind of mashed together as well. Yeah, but even 60 years ago, back in 1963, of course, we got one of our earliest taste of anime with Astro Boy when Astro Boy debuted in January of 63 on NBC. So it's been a pretty lengthy run they've had. Go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go. And there's Gigantor, Speed Racer, Kimba the White Lion, so those are some of the older ones, like real older ones that actually came over to the States. A lot of these are the ones that like Vic Mignogna would have been watching when he was a kid, so. And of course, if you haven't already, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated as well. Anyways, hopefully. Yeah, so I did see somebody pop up on Messenger and hopefully we'll get some people in here soon. uh, Anyways, I'm gonna mute myself one more time here. Yeah, still waiting for people to show up here. Hmm. Yeah, it is kind of hard to do a panel show when you don't have a panel. Yeah, panelist. Um, and I can run my mouth quite a bit, as you all know. Look like I did get a. Rick just messaged me back. Miss the bus, so closer to. I'm flying solo. So. Alright. Anyways, Metal, you're here. Finally. I might be in there in a minute, waiting for StreamYard to actually work on. All right. Well, hopefully you'll get in here soon because I'm like running on my own here. I've been like trying to, trying to keep things going as best I can all by myself. Rick said he'll be. Initially, he told me he'd be here in about half hour into the show, but he missed his bus. He just, it would be more like an hour. So it looked like we. And if you can, Metal, if you have a second screen up, on YouTube. If you can like and share the screen, see if we can get some more friendly people in here. That'd be appreciated. Go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer. Ah, there you are. Oh wait.
Hey. Yeah, sorry. Not,
I've just spent almost the last 26 and a half minutes here just running my mouth.
Well, I had just come in from walking my dog because this is about the time where I have to walk the dog every single night, and like it was not wanting to pick up my mic or camera at all, and I had to reset the browser for StreamYard like 5 times.
Oh yeah, don't you just hate it when that stuff happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had stuff like that happen before too. It can be a bit of a pain. So how's your weekend going?
It's going all right. Been trying to keep busy,
Yeah.
working on pre-production work for that magazine, but aside from that, it's been moving along.
I don't know if you heard me before. I was seeing if you had a second window open on the YouTube page. If you could like.
Oh yeah, no, I do.
Yeah. So like and share the screen. See if we get some more friendly people in here. That'd help. Yeah. So yeah. So I was hoping RJ would be here, but I guess he was busy today because I can't even reach him. Give his Oh, and you know that I have you for this Friday, right? For the
I completely forgot, but if you send me the materials, I'll be ready.
All right. I'll probably try to send it to you tomorrow. Just gotta nail down. We'll be reading from Centaur publications, so I'll be what will probably be
Okay.
got a message. You know, just go see if you are now.
Yeah, I actually almost couldn't be here today,
Oh,
but because my mother's in the hospital, I was going to go visit her, but my brother decided to take off without me,
oh, okay.
so I'm here anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for that, because otherwise I'd be trying to fill a lot of dead air without
Yeah,
nobody to feed off of there.
yeah. Because I remember Rick is in transit today, so I'm like, oh, what, he may not actually be here, even he said he would, because transit's unreliable. You never know when things get delayed and whether you actually have the time or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of messaging Tim here. Yeah. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when I was mentioning earlier, there hasn't been a whole lot in the realm of Nietzsche going on this past week. Um, I guess the two biggest stories that kind of came out this week. I don't know if you had heard about either of them. Of course, one was IDW delisting itself from the New York Stock Exchange. IDW seems to be continuing its downward slide.
Mm.
You know, well, I don't know if you had heard they lost the transform. I think they lost like the Transformers
Ooh,
GI properties
that's
last.
like their biggest market right there too.
Yeah, they lost those properties late last year, and the other big story that came out this week, and I read part of the article, but then because the whole situation just seemed kind of stupid. Um, I don't know if you'd heard about this as well. There was a bit of a tiff that happened between Matt Walsh and Jeremy Hambley, the quartering.
Yes, actually, I think we talked about that a little bit at the end of the vomitorium. I wanted to talk about it longer, but we didn't even remember to talk about it till the very end because it's not just him, but that's the quartering's like the biggest person that he had a tiff with.
Yeah. Well, he comes off as kind of a Matt Walsh comes off as kind of a Puritan. Hey, Shadowhawk, Mike and Jet can't stay, but wanted to drop in and say hi and leave a like. All right, well, thank you, Shadowhawk. Hopefully, we'll get you into the studio one of these days to join in on the conversation. But thank you for at least dropping in and saying hi. Do appreciate it.
But he's also he's an intuit, right? So he doesn't actually like really think through. He's not trying to reason his opinions. He's trying to feel them through, right? And part of it too is he is an entertainer. Walsh? Yeah, Matt Walsh. He's an intuit, right? Even like in his humor, he'll say like, "I don't know why, it just feels satanic to me. I'm not going to explain it, right?" And a lot of it is humor, but he is kind of a Puritan in that way too. And I don't think people should really be taking the stuff he says seriously. It's almost like feeding a troll on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah.
Which troll are we talking about this time? Because there's so many of them. They're like the lead.
We're talking about Matt Walsh.
Oh.
Can't say what's on TV or is dinner ready. All right.
Because trolls are like that demon legion. There are many in one demon. Yeah.
Yeah,
they can be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, forgot. Yeah. That I noticed happened this past week was kind of a tip between Matt Walsh and Quartering. I know there's an article on Bounding into Comics. I guess we can go over that. Actually, before we go over that, though, of course, why don't we go ahead now that we have three of us in here? You guys want to each do your intro, and of course, as you're doing your intros, you can share whatever links you want in the chat and all that. Start with Metal, and then go down to Tim. All right. So right. Metal, go for it.
Yeah, I'm Metal. I'm the creator of X Dynamis Chaos, which is a online publication for fantasy and other fiction within a similar universe. I've got several stories there. You can find that stuff at xdynamischaos.com, which is always trailing over my head in my video. I guess
it is right now, I think.
Yeah, it's always there. That's why I run it like that. And I also host a show called The Lawmouth Emporium twice a week, and sometimes more if a special guest wants to promote something. I don't know, it's just a fun show. I wouldn't necessarily call it niche, but I wouldn't not. We cover a wide range of topics, both popular and niche. Just whatever me and my co-host feel like at the time.
Mostly video games, right?
That's the one where you find the most news for. It's that and film comes up the most, but we'll talk about everything: board games, comics, anything that just comes in our mind. Sometimes he wants to talk about like cryptocurrency and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then what's this link for? Metal?
Oh, that's my publication, X Dynamis Chaos.
Okay, so if you guys want to go check that out, there's the link right there.
A name that will grow on you the more you hear it.
Yes, it's a great name. It's just a weird one the first time.
Yeah, just like wait, and after I that actually is a pretty cool name actually.
It means of bountiful chaos. It's great.
There you go.
All right. So anything more there, Metal, or
no? That's it.
All right, Tim, you're up, and of course you can share any links that you'd like as well. I know you actually have a comic that you're going to be.
Oh, you mean
July, I believe.
July 29th, Pacific Daytime. I don't know why they put the PDT for, but just to know it's July 29th. On Fund My Comics, Melvin 3, the third installment of the series, will be launching.
All right. And, of course, if you want to share any links in the chat, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, it'll take me a while to get to that. Yeah. Bear with me.
All right.
Continue blabbing as I
yeah, I know. Actually, what I'm going to do...
Melvin needs a heavy metal theme song.
You think so?
Yeah, I think Melvin needs a heavy metal theme song.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's only fitting.
So what I'm going to... Well, let's see. Oh, did you put... Oh,
that's the sign-up page.
I see. Oh, you put it. Yeah, that's right.
If you want, I can copy and paste that into the chat since I have two windows open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just about to do it, but if you want to do it as well,
Yeah.
Metal,
There we go.
you probably could do it faster, in fact, than I could.
Yeah, because I have the YouTube on one side and I've got the StreamYard on the other window. So it's just like dragging my mouse across.
And that's the link to the actual campaign page that will show that it won't launch. It's not. It's approved, but it won't launch until July 29th.
Oh, and then we got the Fund My Comic. I got it.
All right. I'm gonna while you're doing.
I am assuming, Metal, you probably have enough material to actually do an omnibus of your stuff.
I don't know if I'd use the word omnibus, but I've got like maybe 200 pages now that are actually finished. Doing different things. At least a good volume.
Good size volume.
Yeah. I've got enough written I could make an omnibus, but I mean the pages need to be done.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm starting to write scripts that I'm in not even in a position to have worked on yet. Only because I get bored.
All right. So and then
I constantly have to have something to do, or else I find myself getting in trouble.
Yeah. You have a history.
Well, they do say in the Bible that an idle hands are the devil's playthings, but what I would add to that is an idle mind is a devil's plaything as well. And this is here's the fun mic. And what's this link for, Tim?
That's for the actual campaign. I had to make the sign up page separate from the campaign because for some reason it would work for a while and then it would stop working. I mean, even after like Luke fixed it, eventually, like I was on a stream, people tried to sign up for it and it wouldn't work. And so I deleted it from my campaign page and just made a separate sign up page.
All right.
And it's worked since then.
All right. Well, that's probably something that, of course.
Well, I think it's something in the
Luke is going to need to look more into that.
Because when you get what we do is you copy the code, and when you go to the body, you have to hit you have to click on a button, and it shows the entire code there, and you have to find a spot to put it. And for some reason, it just wasn't working. So.
All right, so I did go ahead and pull up the article from Bounding into Comics on the Matt Walsh and Jeremy Hambly thing. You guys feel like going over it? We can.
Yeah, I'm okay.
We can see what's being said and then critique it as we always do.
Yeah. It's actually the second person in our kind of like niche spaces that have gotten into a flick with him. All of it is starting it with him.
Matt Walsh or Jeremy Hambly?
The second person that Walsh has had a flick with recently. Yeah. For similar reasons. George Alexopoulos started a tiff with him too. Saying like I'll debate you and stuff like that right before Hambly. It was all for the same stuff because Walsh has been calling things like comics and anime and video games and stuff satanic or childish for like a year now.
Yeah. Well, I know Alan Moore also critiqued adults who still watch cartoons or read comics as childish as well. I know.
He can go to hell.
Yeah. He also thinks he's like a wizard, so I don't know if you should listen to him.
I'm not necessarily I'm not saying that I'm influenced by Moore. I'm just saying what is. I'm just reporting what.
Yeah. I don't listen to wizards.
We're just waiting for all the snakes to come forward and explain what he did to them.
We're off to see the wonderful Wizard of Oz. All right, so here we go. Here's the article. And I kind of went over like partially, but it got kind of long, and I didn't feel like going over like too far over an hour with this when I did it the other day. So I kind of stopped about halfway through because I'd already done a couple other stories, and I just picked this one up, and it just seemed like I really feel like going an hour and a half on this. No. So, anyways, Matt Walsh triggers Jeremy the Cordery Hambly with Christian teaching about moderation and discipline in regards to video games. Article by John F. Trent, published back on May 3rd, 2023, Anime Video Games. All right, let's see what Mr. Walsh has to say here. Daily Wire host Matt Walsh recently triggered YouTube personality Jeremy Hambley, aka The Quartering, after he shared pretty basic Christian teachings on moderation and discipline in regards to video games. Yeah, one of the other things I was noticing when I was reading this article is Matt Walsh kept saying that Jeremy went after him directly, but yet he was giving no evidence of that, at least from what I saw in the article.
Yeah, because it was a different tweet that triggered this altogether. It was like I think it was a congressman or something like that.
Well, they showed the tweet here too, but it may have been implied or inferred that it was Walsh, but he did not directly say Walsh in the tweet. But anyway, so Walsh tweeted back in March. That should be on March 8th, 2018, not in. At least with the way they're saying it here. Quote, video games are a sacred cow because our country is filled with adults who are obsessed with them. That's why we all pretend insanely that there's nothing wrong with or disturbing about a child spending all day killing people in a virtual world. Sound familiar, guys?
Sounds like somebody who talks about, Christian principles as it pertains to pop culture are usually the opposite of what they say they are.
Well, that's not exactly where I was going with that. I was going with an issue that we've talked quite a bit about when they've gone trying to censor video games, and basically saying how there's an undertone here. It sounds like where he's cut his reasoning in there is the idea. Oh, video games are likely to make you more violent.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's a never-ending conflict with people like this. They've been trying to blame video games for decades now.
Their argument is that playing video games desensitizes you to the realities of the situation.
There is a good counter argument though. Not if he left off the whole killing part and he was just like, "Hey, your kids probably just shouldn't be in front of a digital screen all day." If he was purely on the moderation, he would have a good argument. It's when he starts throwing in all these other stuff and you start seeing these like hints and pieces of the same talking points that you see over and over again.
Yeah. Back in October,
I would argue that human beings have been enjoying violent entertainment since the ancient Roman times, where they watch people die for real.
Yeah. I mean, well, you go back to ancient Rome and the gladiatorial games, right?
Well, if we're talking about gladiators, almost nobody ever died in them. In actuality, movies have given us a weird idea of what gladiation was like. It was a lot closer to professional wrestling. If you actually look at the history of it, yeah, most deaths were accidents. People even had their favorites, like they would have like vases and like tapestries of the people they liked. People hardly ever died. Now, if you want to talk about death for real, they were often killing animals in there, right? Like a lot of the lions and stuff were actually spirits.
The point would be they were enjoying violent entertainment.
Yeah, for sure. But it wasn't much different than enjoying like professional wrestling today.
Yeah. Let's see. Intense words. Laugh out loud, never who were they knew before. Never knew who they were before and still don't care about them. Sounds familiar. At Timothy is probably right. Lots of hypocrites running around. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting from a human interest standpoint, in terms of looking at, just looking at, like, at least from my interest in it. Yeah, some of this as I got into it the other day, even I acknowledge it sounded pretty petty at times.
Well, correct.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a televangelist that was all against pornography and then he was caught, I think, with pornography in his car or something about a prostitute.
There have been a few televangelists who've been in that situation.
Right. So point noted. Right.
Yeah. Nintendo. I personally think video games are stupid, only for children. There's plenty of work to do for everyone besides playing video games. Adults can enjoy video. It depends upon. It also depends upon the type of video games, because I think at least the ones that we're talking about here are more the like RPG, fantasy, action adventure type video games. But there's all kinds of video games. There's word video games. There's PC. There's a lot of PC video games too.
I myself just enjoyed Doom Eternal today and yesterday. So.
Yeah.
Which is about killing demons. What's more righteous than that?
Exactly.
So, laugh out loud. There have been several of them. Let's start with Jimmy Swaggart and the Project. That's probably who.
That's exactly who I was talking. Yeah, he also had quite a bit of pornography hidden in his car.
Well, here's my thing too. It's like the idea. It's like all work and no play makes Jack want to chop his family up with an axe. The real thing is, adults have always played games throughout all of history, but usually in most of the healthier societies we've had, adults played games with the younger members of their family, right? Like, you're done with the work for the day. You need to wind down. You need to bond with your family, especially if you're a parent or a grandparent, because that's what keeps society going. So you would take some simple games that children could enjoy, and you would get down and you would play with the children, whether it's your direct children, your nieces or your nephews or whatever. The other members of the family would be involved. And this is how everybody had unwound. And there's plenty of video games that you can do the same thing with it. Like, parents play Mario Party with their kids all the time. I think the bigger message should be about moderation. And part of the moderation is to personally moderate, right? If kids aren't having a bad time, if their parents are involved with them and making sure that they're looking at it right.
Yeah, and I would I would agree with you. I think overall, I would agree more with the moderation aspect of the argument than everything else you decided to go here, because basically, there's a reason that television was at one point known as the boob tube, right?
Yes.
It's like people need. I mean, even I myself, Grant, I spent a good portion of the day in front of the computer screen doing a little bit of everything. Research here and there, looking stuff up, watching stuff. Streaming, stuff like that. But at least I'll go take a walk up to the corner store to grab lunch here and there, or my energy drinks in the morning. I'll get out a bit here and there, and get up and out, because you need to do that, or else you're gonna go nuts. You're just absolutely gonna go nuts, just sitting around too much. Well,
and the problem with the children too in moderation is it's not that they're playing games. If a kid was playing solitaire all day too, right, which is cards, or if a kid was reading books all day, if you don't have any interactivity with you, the isolation is what actually starts to distort their view on reality, right? Parents and other family members need to have personal involvement in each other's lives.
Going back to the point you were making earlier, Metal, was about families, getting together and playing games together. That was a real big thing, in the baby boom era there, right after World War II, well into the early to mid 60s there, where, families would have family game nights where they'd pull out like, a game like Chutes and Ladders or Mousetrap or Monopoly or what have you, and be playing and learning together, in those situations, or just cards. I mean, I know that when I was a kid and my grandmother came out to visit us, and spend time with us, one of the things one of my favorite things doing was we would play a game called Casino, or it wasn't, she called it Casino. I think it's also called Blackjack. We weren't playing for money, obviously. Actually, no, it was Casino. I don't think it was Black. It was called Casino. It was like Blackjack, just without the money aspect of it. The idea was, learning how, it was also learning, working on your arithmetic, and stuff
No,
like that.
we would play blackjack with my family. What we would do is we'd still have the gambling part because I do think if you want to play blackjack right, the gambling is a core part of it. But you could do it in a way that nobody is hurting themselves gambling. And we would go to like McDonald's and we'd get like a large fry each, and we would be putting fries down as the token, so the winner would get fries and stuff. And it would teach you how to like make safe bets, and there's like a whole negotiation aspect of it and stuff like that. Like there's ways of doing family friendly activities like that.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, let's continue on with the article. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Intense Web said here, I don't hold it against anyone. I just don't play them. Yeah.
Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Anyway, so continuing on with the article here. Back in October, Walsh also was asked in an all-access Q&A session what his thoughts on anime were. Yeah, I think I remember covering this a little bit too. He answered, quote, I think it's all satanic. I have no argument for why it is satanic. In fact, you were quoting this. You were actually quoting this.
I was. I've actually seen the episode of Matt Walsh where he said that too, because I do regularly watch his program, so I know his arguments firsthand.
Yeah, it just seems that way to me. All anime to me seems weird, just bizarre, creepy, and in general, I don't think that adults, whether it's anime or any other kind of cartoon, with rare exceptions, adults should not be watching cartoons in general, I would say. Unquote. Well, okay, here's I can identify one of the big problems with that statement for you. Okay? As you guys know, I'm a bit of a cartoon history buff, right?
Yeah.
You remember what some of the first cartoons were that most people know of?
Most people, well, a lot of cartoons were basically wartime cartoons.
Well, okay. What I was getting at, though, you kind of scratched a bit there. I'm talking about the theatrical animated shorts from the 30s and the 40s. Those were originally designed to serve as kind of a warm-up act, because a lot of times when they'd be premiering those cartoons, it was part of family movie night, right? Where people would go to the theaters to watch movies.
Or they'd be spliced in between like the world news or whatever, because people went to the theater to catch the news, and you get different blocks like that.
Yeah. So, they'd put, the animated shorts on, and a lot of the big movie companies were, Columbia, Warner Brothers. Okay. Tim just said he'd be right back.
Yeah. Or like what we were talking about before, they're Paramount now, but they used to be Famous, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different
from what
ones.
I talked about last week.
Yeah.
But and if you really think about it, and you think about it, now and today you have more adult animated shows. Cartoon Network has a whole block of them called Adult Swim. But you also
we go to the mid period. There was the Flintstones, which was aimed at family but adult audiences mostly.
Yeah, even though it wasn't like dirty, and even with the Flintstones, a lot of people would draw comparisons. Well, okay, the Flintstones was what many of you would argue was an animated version of the Honeymooners.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
With that, with shows like the Honeymooners and like I Love Lucy was another one, and I think even Dick Van Dyke was another one.
I love the Dick Van Dyke Show.
One of the things that they pointed out is that even though the couples were married,
they never slept in the same bed.
Right. They never in a lot of those shows they did that. But if you think about it, and of course we would watch a lot of those animated shorts like from MGM and Hanna-Barbera and Famous. we'd watch a lot of those animated shorts when they were put together as compilation shows. If you think about it, a lot of those animated shorts, granted, they weren't over the top adult, but
They were more risque
kind of
than the
adult
TV at the
themes.
time.
What was that?
They were definitely more risque than like the TV and stuff at the time.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I would have to, saying that it's childish is kind of a little disingenuous when you have a lot of animated, you have a lot of older animated shows that were more geared toward that. Well, I wouldn't even. I don't know if you'd even argue that they were geared towards adults as much, but just made more for a general audience.
I will give him one though.
Huh?
A classic one. Bimbo and Betty Boop. You know what? You could argue that's probably kind of satanic. I've seen a lot of those shorts. There's a lot of borderline satanic stuff in them.
Well, I don't know if it was as much. I know the controversy with Betty Boop isn't as much that, unless you're going against the biblical teachings when it comes to like purity and all that. But
No.
I think a lot of the bigger issues, particularly with the earlier
cultic
Betty Boop
stuff.
cartoons.
Oh yeah.
With the earlier Betty Boop cartoons, a lot of the issues there was more. She would dress more risque. She'd let her skirt go a little too high at times. Maybe
So I'm talking Betty Boop pre her own cartoons, where she was a side character for Bimbo, and she still had the long ears because she was a poodle back then. She there was actual like the one she was introduced in had there was a cult, right? There was literally a cult in there. With him running through like death traps for initiation and stuff like that. And there's all kinds of like demons and stuff in those early cartoons. Pre Betty Boop becoming the star and having her own cartoon and becoming a human, there was definitely some like borderline satanic stuff in there. So that one I would give him. Most of the other ones, no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but
modern cartoons, like there's some on the internet, like Has Been Hotel, Hell of a Boss and stuff. Definitely satanic. That's literally the themes of the show.
Yeah, but I mean, basically for about the last 35 years or so, there's been an uptick in more adult-oriented animation.
Yeah,
you go back to Simpsons, Futurama.
Because cartoons are not. The whole reason why cartoons were for kids is because they were pushing a toy line. They were just a commercial for kids. And now there's with the anime being more accepted in America and primetime television starting with The Simpsons. There is more cartoons for adults now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys remember. I've probably mentioned this before, but like some of Hanna-Barbera stuff was originally on primetime.
Yeah.
Flintstones, I think the Jetsons were as well. Top Cat, those shows were all in prime.
That's right.
Yeah.
Here's Rick. Hey, Rick.
Hey, how are you guys?
All right. Are you on your phone or are you
I am on my phone.
Where are you at?
I am in Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
In my
hotel bed?
Yeah.
So I guess you couldn't share any links even if you wanted to, right?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
I could probably find
and I'm not even going to try.
Do you feel like you're on tour or something?
I don't know. I just got back in my lodging facilities. So.
Yeah.
You mean your hotel room?
Yeah, well, yeah, could call it that. The place is called Budget Lodge, so that's why I sort of go lodging.
Whoa, man!
It's like a hotel, but not. There's a mini kitchenette that I have to share with everybody, and the washroom. But I have my own room with a bed, closet TV.
Price of being a rock
Yeah.
star, huh?
I wouldn't say rock star, but
Well, Rick, you want to tell everybody who you are and introduce yourself a little bit?
well, I am Rick Piper of Cross Comics. As I said earlier, I am at the moment presently in Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan. I just did a con called Saskatchewan Entertainment Expo. It was basically a 3-day Comic Con.
I see.
Which is why I brought myself to you by my phone instead of my computer.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I think Metal helped you out because I think he did share the link. Did you do that, Metal?
Yes, to his Fund My Comic for the Canadian Shield 2 and more, which is at 7% funding, so people need to jump in there and boost that up.
Oh no!
So
Is that 2%?
Crazy Lee's
let me
gonna
get
get us.
to these chats real quick, and then I'll kind of catch you up, Rick, on what we've been talking about here. So, Intense Web says Rizzy Lee.
Risey.
Oh, Risey
Our
Lee.
favorite Australian.
Get you. And I understand. I don't know a whole lot about him. I know. I guess he's a YouTuber from Australia. I guess.
Yeah, and a drug.
And I know he used to. I guess he was. I don't know if he was. He had some affiliation with those who shall not be named. Rick and Tim know who I'm talking about. Metal, you probably.
Oh
know.
yes, he who is dead as a doornail.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get through this a bit. Let's see. And then Nintendo Web was saying, "Howdy, Rick. Long weekend. I bet he's probably ready for sleep." And then, of course, here's the link if you guys want to go check Rick's site out. Thank you, Metal, for that.
Did you say it's at 2% metal?
I said 7. It's at 7% funded.
Was it 7?
That's what it says in front of me.
How much it does that? Last I saw it was at $17. Is it higher
Yes,
than
that's
that?
what it says. No, it's $17, which is 7% of the goal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then Nintendo Web, he watches anime all the time. Actually, I'm the one who watches anime all the time.
Lots
Oh,
of people watch
Risey
anime
watches a
all the
lot
time.
of anime.
Oh, Risey does? Is that?
Yeah, he collects like figures and stuff like that too. He's got like a whole shelf of them, and
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so he's like a full. You're saying he's a full-on otaku then?
kind of, yeah.
Oh, yes, guys. I'm not sure whether you heard. I'm fully sold out of Canadian Shield #1.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's cool! Congratulations.
Which means it's finally time for the redo, the
Yeah.
remastering of it. Yeah.
Well, that's about half done. I gotta up the pace on that.
All right.
So hopefully that's done by the end of the month.
Okay. Well,
Anyways, I'll let you catch me up.
All right. Anything more?
Normally I can see the chat, but I can't see the chat tonight because I'm on my phone.
No, bro. No, I was just saying anything more. Like, did you have anything more to say? Because I started and then you.
Not at the moment. If we get into it later, fine. If not.
All right. Well, okay. So let me kind of get you caught up on what we're talking about here. We're going over an article from Bounding into Comics. Don't know if you heard. There's a little bit of a kind of a tiff up between Matt Walsh and Jeremy Hambley, the quartering. So we're kind of going over that a bit and just giving our critique and all that.
Okay, I never heard about that, but okay.
Yeah. Well, the quartering is a pretty well-known YouTuber. So
yeah, I know who he is. I know who Matt Walsh is. I just didn't realize they were beefing.
Well, apparently Matt Walsh triggered Jeremy, or at least according to the article here, talking about the Christian principles of moderation, and we were just going over all that here. So, anyways, continuing on, and I think I did read this part right here. Basically, what he had said here was he doesn't think that adults should be watching cartoons because it's just creepy and all that, But
Okay, that's just wrong.
yeah, yeah, we were just critiquing that statement. It's human.
Yeah, it was like I said earlier too. He doesn't have any rationale behind it. He doesn't have like a critique or a reasoned view. He's more of an intuit, right? Which is why you also maybe take his views with a grain of salt. He's an entertainer, and honestly, he acts like these beefs are bad for him, but he likes them, right? Because it brings more attention to him.
Let me ask you something, Nettle. Let me ask you this, because what it sounds like you're saying is, you think Matt Walsh is one of these guys who will just say something stupid just for the purpose of see if people react?
Yes, he's a provocateur.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does. He even admitted that on his show before, specifically with the anime stuff.
Yeah. Terry's here. Hey, Terry. Let's see in the chat here. I know I sent you the link, so if you want to comment, when is Matt Walsh not triggering someone? Well, hey, Terry, I know I sent you the link as well, so if you want to join us in here, and you can chime in as we're reading the article here. Right now we're talking about how he's triggering Jeremy Hambley, the quartering. So, anyways, I don't know.
You know what they say? Don't feed the trolls.
Yeah. Well, these guys know I had an issue with one particular troll a while back before he passed on. So, anyways, let's get on to this one. So Walsh would later make it clear he was making an off-the-cuff joke about anime while satirizing Media Matters and the other outlets who ran his remarks as serious. He noted, quote, "These are all things that you might say if you believe that I was not being totally serious when I declared all animation made in Japan satanic." I mean, in a way. Now here's something else too. That statement, right? Basically claiming that Japanese are satanic because of the anime they produce. That almost sounds racist if you think about it. And there's Terry now. Hey, Terry.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. And then we got another comment from Joshua Hughes here. Did you kill the guy who was? No, I did not.
Yeah.
Hey,
Joshua.
On actually on his own. I had nothing to do with it.
Oh, just ignore Joshua. He's a troll.
Joshua's only semi-troll.
But
he's
usually a good troll.
Yeah.
Joshua's a guy you don't pay much attention to. Let's put it that way.
Pay attention to him. Just know he's joking.
And of course, I'm trolling Joshua by saying what I'm saying too a little bit.
But actually, I wanted to point this out with this part of the article too, because it's actually about his canceled statement. And if anybody knows the segment of a show, which this is a joke in itself, deadpan humor is 100% his thing. So he's being sarcastic when he's saying this while still being deadpan. The canceled section is when he jokingly cancels something. Usually it's someone who is trying to cancel somebody else or whatever, or like it's a broad group of people. But he's even canceled his own, if you want to call them coworkers, whatever. He's canceled Michael Knowles before jokingly. That's part of his bit, you know. People are reading way too into a guy who just says things off the cuff comedically.
Oh, we know this.
Yeah. And Rick and Joshua is asking, is Rick doing a sleep stream finally? Hey, Woody's here. Everyone troll the person below.
And no, I'm not doing a sleep stream. I'm just simply in my hotel room in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, just having got back from a con, the last day of a con.
Okay.
Okay, so continuing on with the article here. But again, I am serious. If I was joking, I would laugh. Deadpan humor has never been my thing, as you well know. I think that's sarcasm, right?
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
He's talking to his audience when he says this.
Quote, and that is why, in the end, with all that said, anime is still canceled and cast back down into the fiery hell flames from whence it came. He deadpanned. Now, mind you, if he's trying to give more of the Christian perspective here, okay, he may have some, I wouldn't go as far as saying anime is satanic per se, but
No.
there is a lot of material in it that is not necessarily pure. If you've ever watched any like harem animes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, heck, I actually have a book by some people. It's a more devotional type, but it's finding God in anime.
Yeah. Well, here's something else too. And you guys might remember this back in the early '80s. Toei Animation did the animation for Superbook and Flying House. I don't know if you guys ever saw those or remember those. They were produced by the Christian Broadcast System back in the early '80s.
And anime is just simply basically animation in Japan. You know,
Yeah,
the
it's what
word.
Japanese call
So, I'm sure there's lots of different anime in Japan. Some could be good, some could be bad.
You want a really based anime? You want one that you can watch with people? No, what? Why did Woody mute time out Joshua? That's rude. But a really based anime is that there was the anime adaptation of the manga adaptation of Anne of Green Gables.
Okay.
It's great. You should watch it.
And Anna Green Gables, of course, is a Canadian thing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. An anime based in Japan on Anna Green Gables.
No, it's literally just an adaptation, right? So there's a manga adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, and then they made an anime adaptation of the manga adaptation.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that of the books or of the TV series?
I think the books.
Yeah, that the one you're talking about is an older one too. I believe,
is
right?
It is
very old.
Yeah.
I think like either late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around there.
So Metal, here's an answer to your question. Woody saying, "Hey Joshua, I fat fingered the key. Sorry."
Oh well, that's all good then, I guess.
Intense Web says, "I liked all the Evangelion movies." Now, in the Evangelion, some people might argue maybe somewhat. There might be some people who might say that's somewhat satanic, or or like.
I think it's just incompetent.
Yeah.
Let's see. Arg.
You have to understand the inspiration behind the story. Most people don't get the inspiration behind the story
Story of what?
of Evangelion.
And it's very shallow. Like everybody's like, oh,
It
look at the
is.
philosophy, look at all the Judeo-Christian iconography and references and stuff. It's like, no, it's literally knee deep. You can get it on the surface if you actually are just paying attention. It's not that deep.
Yeah. Well, they really took a left turn toward the end of the series when they went all surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
What are we talking about now?
Evangelion.
We're talking about you, Timothy.
Oh, I'm awesome. Thank you.
No, we're talking how bad you are.
Oh, haters gotta hate, man. That's okay. You do you.
Haters always hate. That's not the issue.
all right. So
The issue has to be why.
Well, I mean, it's really not an issue. Okay, you don't like anime, you don't like anything. Go find something you do like.
Do like.
Yeah.
No, but problem
I
is
guess what
that's
Tim
too
is
much
saying
like
is
right.
why would you choose to sit in misery? Why not just find something that gives you joy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can't help it if you don't like to have fun.
that's true.
What if his fun is hopping on the internet and broadcasting a show where he uses deadpan humor to make fun of other things that he doesn't care about?
Now there's an
We should all just learn to ignore them.
There's
That's what
something
I said.
interesting.
I hate to cut it short, but there's somebody else wanting to talk to me, so I'll chat you guys later.
All
Okay,
right.
later,
Well,
Tim.
thanks for dropping in, Tim.
Yep.
All right. All right. So, yeah, I was going on my own for like the first 25, 30 minutes until Metal and Tim finally joined me.
Yeah.
A little more difficult.
I would have been here sooner, but buses is in this city.
Yeah. Anyways, getting back to the article here. So, Hamley, aka the Quartering, took issue with Walsh's opinions, writing on Twitter, quote, "The right's weird obsession with disavowing video games, anime, and social media is why they will never appeal to most of Gen Z. The base is literally dying off, and most of the voices in the community are actually refusing recruits," unquote. He then made it clear he was discussing Walsh, writing, quote, "Matt's not the only guy saying it. That was some other moron who tweeted anime is for pedophiles or something the other day." Yeah, okay, so I stand corrected there because I didn't see before. I didn't make the connection where Jeremy directly said something to Matt. But they were,
I think this is confusing the timeline. Right. I think this is also slightly confusing the timeline onto what is this bounding into comics part. Jeremy had replied to that other guy first, and then because he made this, people were bringing up Matt, and that's why he responds directly to Matt too. So this is actually a huge mess of different tweets going on.
Yeah. Walsh would respond to Hamley's criticism where he further detailed his position on video games. Walsh said, quote, "There are a few points that matter, I think, but you won't be able to hear them if you insist absolutely that no statements, even vaguely critical of video games, can be uttered in your presence. If video games are a religion for you, then there's not much I can say to get through to you," unquote. What do you guys think of that? First off, do you guys think that video games are religion to Quartering?
No.
Him personally, no. Some people,
No.
yeah.
Some people, yeah.
Some people can't get that way, but in the case of Quartering,
Nah.
Walsh may be overstating his point.
I do think there are some borderline religious aspects to Quartering's geekery. I don't think that's entirely his fault. I think that's like that for quite a few people in general, whether they intend to or not. To some degree, you don't choose what you worship if you're not vigilant about it.
Was somebody about to say something? I thought I heard something
Yeah, I was just agreeing with Metal.
Okay. Anyways, continuing on here. Quote, "But for everybody else, here's what it boils down to," unquote, Walsh continued. Quote, "There's obviously nothing inherently wrong with video games as a medium. It's just another form of screen-based entertainment." Okay. Walsh went on to point out, quote, "The two things we have to take into consideration with screen-based entertainment of all kinds are, one, the messages embedded in the content, and 2, the amount of time spent on the content. While explaining how powerful screens are at messaging to people and influencing them, Walsh points out, quote, go to any school and you'll find a building full of kids whose values, beliefs, priorities, tastes have been nearly completely determined by the content they spent their days ingesting through the screen. Video games are not the only example of this, or even the most potent example, but they also obviously aren't an exception. Unquote. Now, from what I take from that, he's talking about something that has been happening, I'd say, for the past 40 years or so, going all the way back to the 80s, where we talk a lot about it with video games, but you can make the argument with cartoons, with any form of social media or social or any form of
movies, TV,
Movies,
like you
TV.
said.
even radio to some degree too. Yeah, there's no screen there.
And it goes. And the reason it really picked up in the 80s is because the whole situation with the latchkey situation, where you didn't have parents at home. You didn't have parents at home moderating. Even with babysitters a lot. Not really moderating as much.
Babysitters are just there to feed the kids, possibly, and make sure they didn't get into anything too unsafe.
Right.
And I never understood that because I've done a lot of babysitting as an adult, and I always sat there with the kids and did activities with them because kids should be doing activities with older people. It's what helps them develop.
Yeah.
Just make sure somebody doesn't try to turn that around into something more insidious, though.
Yeah, well, that's also why you should find babysitters you trust, usually family members or very close friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, continuing on here, Walsh isn't the only one to make this argument. The Walt Disney Company CEOs, Bob Chapek and Bob Iger, have also made this argument. In response to a Florida bill that is now law, banning the teaching of gender identity and sexual orientation to students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Chapek informed Disney employees they would work around the bill through the content they create. So what they're basically saying, they're going to subvert the law. I think you guys know the
they're
bill.
Going to subvert the government. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Don't say gay bill, But
or that's what it's being called by the media. It actually doesn't say that.
Right.
What
it is, and it's actually not called that either.
So. It's giving the rights back to parents to determine what their children is to be taught in the school. It's
Yeah.
And
or what teachers can.
It sounds like Disney here is outright saying that they're going to subvert the parents.
Well, and a big thing is it's a generation change too. Like everybody's caught off guard. The previous generation of parents weren't really involved in schools, and there was kind of like a level of trust and stuff. Like maybe when the kids are really, really young, some of them you have like your room moms, but then you kind of get to that like latchkey part. And then you get to like when my generation becomes parents, you suddenly start to see them paying attention to what's going on in schools again, and they're like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, you hear it, and then it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, because we know the joke that went on with us.
And then Intense Web says later, and then Chibi Joshua, let's see what he has to say here. This started because George
Alexopoulos. I brought this up earlier.
Was talking about conservatives who dismiss pop culture, and I think some people were asking for an example, and the quote tweeted an old Matt Walsh tweet.
5 years old.
Yeah.
You want to read this part?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. And other internet microcelebrities started saying the same thing that George was saying and the Quartering was saying in his tweet, but Matt Walsh thought the Quartering was talking about him. Yeah, like this whole conversation, even though George directed at Matt, kind of predates the Quartering, and the Quartering wasn't even necessarily talking directly to Matt because there's this whole buzz that got swarmed up between like conservative and non-conservative, like influencers, even some like Congress people and stuff. And this is just the height that everybody's paying attention because both Matt and the Quartering have a lot of followers.
Well, I do know there are some Christians out there who have what I would call more of a puritanical sense of what the Bible says.
Yeah.
Matt Walsh is obviously one of those people. Or at least comes off or tries to come off as like, I don't know if that's just part of his shtick, or if it is for real or not. But
then there's also that whole message that he will make the unclean clean, right? Which is why we can eat pork these days.
What was that, Metal? Can you repeat what you just said?
Well, I was saying there's also the principle that he will make the unclean clean, which is why we can eat pork these days, right? That's not to say that it still isn't unclean in some cases, but if you go in there with like the guidance of the Holy Spirit and stuff, you can find nutrients and value in these other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was part of the Peter thing with the carpet with all the food on. In I think it's Acts. Basically, that was also partly bringing the Gentiles into the whole Christianity thing, which
and
the
from
Gentiles
that
seem to have
we're all Gentiles.
Pardon?
I said, and from that perspective, everyone in this conversation here are Gentiles. I don't really see a Jew amongst us.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, the Gentiles took over the Christian.
Yeah.
That's Jewish-based sect.
Yeah. So, anyways, continuing on with the article here, he said, quote, because this struggle is much bigger than any one bill in any one state, I believe the best way for our company to bring about lasting change is through the inspiring content we produce, the welcoming culture we create, and the diverse community organizations we support, unquote. My translation for this is, we don't give a hoot about what people like DeSantis and parents think. We're going to shove this stuff down your child's throats and brainwash them to turn against you. That's my translation for that.
Yours and about everyone else who disagrees with this whole thing.
Right.
But really, it's a clash of religions when you think about it, right? They have their own views, and they think that they're doing the right thing, even if they aren't.
Christianity. And that's been going on for what, the last...
a clash of worldviews.
Yeah.
But this one's, it's a little more than just secularism, though. It comes from the Marxism, but it is kind of almost like its own spiritual religion that just lacks a god, unless you want to say like the end of history is their god.
What, the apocalypse, you mean?
No, they have a different view of it, but you know how they always say they're on the right side of history. There's this kind of like Gnostic Marxist belief that goes back to Hegel, where history has a guiding focus, right? So you always want to be on the right side, and the end of history is kind of sort of like their version of the kingdom of God returning to earth, and that there will be a utopia at the end of history after all of these dialectic solutes and solvents end up fighting with each other, and there's only one thing left. There's an actual like religious spiritual belief here that even like most of the followers don't even truly understand, but it's been building up for a long time.
Yeah. I was just catching up on some messages from Facebook there. Oh, and I think Chibi Joshua added some. You want to read this one because you seem to be more in the know on this.
Yeah. He says, I think the reason George Alexopoulos is so hell-bent on this is because he's crowdfunding a comic right now. I agree. George, love the guy, but he is a marketer. That's everything about him. And he always starts stuff with people around the time that he needs to market something because he wants to be in the zeitgeist. And full-on capitalism, nothing against him for it at all. But that's pretty much every time you see stuff like this happening.
Yeah, let's not sell comics through drama.
Well, what I would have to say to that is save the drama for your mama.
Well,
Don't even
nowadays,
bring it to your mama.
nowadays, you really can't sell a comic without the drama. And if it's not really offending anyone. Ooh.
Hey, I sold lots of comics, well, a fair amount of comics today with no drama.
All right. So, anyways, getting back to the article here, of course. Quote, there's a reason content is at the top of this list. For nearly a century, our company's stories have opened minds, inspired dreams, shown the world both as it is and how we wish it could be. And now, more than ever before, represent the incredible diversity of our society. We are telling stories, raising voices, and I believe changing hearts and minds. Unquote. He added.
Yeah, and your owner, Walt Disney, would be appalled at what you're doing.
Yeah. Those of us in the know this.
According to what Batgoat told, I don't know if that would be 100% true or not. It probably would, because I know Disney was more about, at least from my perspective, was more about like letting kids be kids. But according to Batgoat, though, he was fairly for his time period, as it were.
What?
You cut out for a second.
I did?
Yeah. So we heard he was fairly, and then it cut out. So.
For his time, he was considered fairly liberal. Walt Disney was.
Yeah, but what's liberal today isn't even close to what was liberal back then.
Most of these people aren't even actually liberal.
Liberal.
Right?
No, they're not.
He was very anti-communist.
They're more fascist than fascist.
He hated Marxists. So he probably actually would be against quite a bit of the stuff going on now. Not all of it, but quite a bit of it at least.
Mm-hmm. All right. So continuing on here then. So he later noted, quote, I firmly believe that our ability to tell such stories and have them received with open eyes, ears, and hearts. Translation, we will brainwash your kid. We will brainwash your kid. We will brainwash your kids.
Yeah.
Well, it says I firmly believe that our ability has been received. No, it's not been received. That's why people are rejecting you.
Yeah. Would be diminished if our company were to become a political football in any debate.
You've already done that.
You're making yourself a political football, though. Would you not agree with that, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are actually actively making themselves a political football. So,
and historically, they stayed out of it up until that one bill. That was when things really started to change.
Yeah.
In fact, it's because of their resistance to that bill that they ended up losing their autonomy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and some of their special stuff, like their tax status.
Yeah,
right.
Their privileges.
Right. Quote, powerful content that changes hearts and minds only springs from inclusive cultures. You see, here's too. They're taking advantage of the fact that a lot of their content is for kids because they know that they can more easily influence a child's mind than they can an adult's. So that's why they're doing this. I know that's probably a no-brainer, but still, it
course.
deserves.
I don't think their language entirely wrong. Their intent is, but like I don't know, I can look at history and be like, well, I mean, one of the reasons Christianity became as big as it is because it actually was a pretty inclusive culture. Almost imperialistically, it would like bring in other people and be like, no, your God can stay. They're a saint now.
And so, which not only attract and retain the best and most diverse talent, but also give those employees the freedom to bring forth ideas that reflect their lives and experiences. We must work together to ensure Disney always remains such a place, Chapek asserted.
I don't think that would go along with Walt's ideals necessarily, because I think he was pretty strict in how he did things.
Yeah. Well, Walt,
Yeah.
at least from what I remember seeing of it, like, because if you guys remember, of course, he would often be, on screen a lot during like the Wonderful World of Disney programs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You'd see, and as I think back and stuff, my impression of it would be that I think he was more the type who would just simply want to let kids be kids. A lot
Yeah.
of
Well,
I think
this
I do kind of, at least from my perspective, I would agree with you that a lot of stuff they're trying to push here, he'd have to be turning over in his grave right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
What I would mean is, okay, yeah, he's one way on TV, and not that he's not that same way off air, but there's a difference between how you're, talk on TV and like work ethic to get people doing stuff and what you want to do with your company and stuff. You don't let people come in to your company and tell you, oh, I want to change this about your company or that because this is how I've lived or whatever.
There's actually precedence for that too, because there was a whole bunch of animators, Don Bluth being one of them that worked with them, and they're like, no, we kind of want to change the direction that like the animated films and stuff are going, and they're like, you're working our way or not, and that's why they all left, and they did like Don Bluth Productions, and there was a couple other studios that were made out of that too.
Yeah, well, Don Bluth Productions, the company that gave us All Dogs Go to Heaven, of course.
Yeah. But that came out of the fact that Disney and his estate didn't want people changing how things were doing too much. Like they had a way that they did things, and like you can come in and you can do things our way with a slight spin, a little bit of your voice and flavor, or you can leave and do your own thing. But that's the only option we were given for the longest time.
Yeah, that Don Bluth isn't the only one.
There were several.
You could say Hanna-Barbera was born out of that too, because William Hanna and Joe Barbera were originally worked for MGM, and then they ended up going off and creating Hanna-Barbera Productions.
Yeah. I've seen a good movie. It's been a while, and I forget where I saw it. It's something of the Walt Disney story or the Disney story or something like that about how Walt got his start and all that, and the grind that he had to do and all the stuff that he went through.
So Terry, you're doing some drawing there?
Yeah. Just working out a logo.
As we're talking.
Yeah.
Right.
But the thing is, when you're given an ultimatum like that, it kind of hurts.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be given ultimatums.
Yeah.
Usually, it's not going to work out the way you actually plan.
But the thing is, you're working for somebody; they're paying you.
Right.
So you have to usually do it their way.
Exactly.
Because they're the boss. They're the one footing the bills. They're the one. If it fails, they're the one that's going to have to take,
Right.
the fall. The hurt, whatever, in the pocketbook.
Yeah, they have to take the brunt of the heat if it fails.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get back to the article here and continue on here. So Bob Iger would echo these comments when he returned to the role of CEO. When asked about the Florida law, Iger told Disney employees, quote, "This company has been telling stories for hundreds of years, and those stories have had a meaningful, positive impact on the world. And one of the reasons that they've had a meaningful, positive impact is one of our core values is inclusion, acceptance, and tolerance. And we can't lose that. We just can't lose that." Based on it, would you guys agree that Walt Disney would agree with that statement?
Well, again, maybe not, because their meanings of those words and his meaning of those words, I think, would be two entirely different things.
Yeah, good point there. Because a lot of it comes down to interpretation, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's individual interpretation.
Right.
Which is one of the things we often talk about here too, is word usage and interpretation. Because, as we know, as we've pointed out on several occasions, several words have several different meanings. A word, may have one meaning in, let's say, the 1930s, for example, and has a totally different meaning today.
True.
Yeah. So, and just what, okay, take inclusion. What Walt would think inclusion would be way different than what we would think inclusion would be today, or especially the woke people.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Walt's vision of inclusion would be, it doesn't matter what color you are as long as you can do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, the other two, acceptance and tolerance, Yeah. As long as you're doing your job the way that I want to, I'll tolerate your attitude, maybe.
Right.
So anyways, continuing on, Walsh would go on to criticize certain violent video games that he believes are desensitizing people to violence. Sound familiar, guys?
So you're telling me Matt Walsh has never seen a Looney Tunes cartoon in his life?
Well, I want you to think about it for a moment, a little bit longer here. I'll reread that statement. Walsh would go on to criticize certain violent video games that he believes are desensitizing people to violence. And I ask again, does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
It's literally the whole 90s.
Yeah, stuff that's gone on before. But the thing is, too, and these people forget, like before the age that we're in now, there were wars and all that, and people saw more bloodshed in real life probably than, that they've seen in video games. We try and make it that life, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, or 1,000 years ago was, all peaceful and rainbows. Well, no, there was death and all that sort of stuff.
We were talking about the whole idea of the gladiatorial games earlier.
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier. And then as Terry pointed out, he surmises that Walsh probably never saw a Looney Tunes cartoon or an MGM cartoon. Like, I know I've probably told you about this one before. There's one particular cartoon from MGM, from a Tom and Jerry cartoon, that really sticks out in my mind when it comes to, like, granted, it's not gory violence, but it still could be considered violence. It's what you might call a concerto of violence, where you have Tom, Jerry, and Spike involved, and you have Jerry hitting Tom in the shin with a pipe, Tom swinging a pan down on Jerry's head, and Spike sitting there and swinging a bat over Tom's head. Kind of the concerto of ding.
Oh, don't forget that Tom also usually hits Spike on the backswing by accident too, like he would clever him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you guys know the short I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah. But what point is, before we had cartoons or whatever, there was violence in real life, and people seen it every day. We've been probably desensitized to violence for the last She's
100 years.
almost the dawn of creation.
Mhm.
As people, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It depends on
Well,
what
remember, the
people are.
Bible at one point called for, the stoning of sinners, right? Or people
Yeah.
Yes.
who did certain acts, and of course that was usually a pretty public affair.
Oh, it's a great
Yeah.
bonding experience. If everybody gets
It
around
was.
and they see somebody who's messing up society get stoned, they're like, man, aren't we better people for not being the one in the pit there?
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyways, going back to the article here, he doesn't name any games, but he points out that it's games whose violence, quote, is gratuitous and amoral and overly graphic. When it is violence for the sake of violence, when
Gratuitous violence.
it's violence where the entertainment comes simply watching someone suffer, even if in a fictional context. My guess is what he's talking about is he's talking about like the mafioso type games, the games like Grand Theft Auto. That kind of sounds like what he's kind of talking about, like those.
Yeah, possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah. But he's not himself giving the examples, though.
Yeah.
Walsh notes this type of violence, quote, undermines human dignity and desensitizes the view, especially if the view is a child. Unquote. I would say maybe to a certain extent he may have a point there. More in the fact that the child, because again, a child's mind is very malleable, right?
Yeah, but
Right.
children also
So-
aren't stupid.
No.
Yeah.
Every child who's ever played Grand Theft Auto knows that this is a game about choices, and with
I
those
think
choices come consequences. You might
Yeah.
get shot at, you might get arrested, you whatever
I'll
you
say
choose to do.
most of them because unfortunately, some of them, the parents aren't teaching them anything.
Hmm.
Well, that was my
Yeah.
point earlier I was going to get to. I think it's more of a problem of isolation than it is the actual medium, right?
Even
If
right.
you're sitting down with your parents playing this game, I don't think you're going to actually pull the values of the game into your life. You're actually just having a fun time and stuff like that.
Right.
If you're a kid who's just spending hours and hours in a room by yourself playing Grand Theft Auto, yeah, I mean your social health is going to actually be to a low point that you might start bringing this into your system, and that's less to do with the violent game. That's more to do with the isolation.
Well,
Right.
The upbringing or
I
whatever.
also know that people, and I also know there's been a sect of people who have tried to link some of these school shootings over the past 20, 25 years to video games. Based on
They've been trying to do that since
isolation.
they've been trying to do that since the 80s.
Yeah.
And each time they tried it, it failed because they're not understanding the concept of what's going to happen, of what's going
I
on.
mean, I think Walsh has somewhat of a point there, but I think depends upon the child. I think there are other factors that take how much involvement the parent has for one.
Yeah, right.
To the child, because an older child, somebody's like 13 to 15 isn't going to react to it the same way that a 3 to 5-year-old
5-year-old will, right.
So I think to a certain point, yeah, he may have a point, but I think it depends upon the circumstances involved.
There's a lot of factors involved, basically, is what we can say.
Right.
Yeah.
So to make this as a general statement is just kind of oversimplifying it, I believe.
It is.
However, he notes that there are good forms of violence, what he calls heroic violence, that is done in the defense of the innocent or done by just superheroes. Well, yeah, well, okay. Here's kind of
Now we go back to Frederick Wortham.
Yep. I was just thinking that because that's how people thought, if you remember, one of the arguments that Wortham made about Superman was that he was a fascist. Even though he
Right.
out, and saving people, but doing it in such ways that, it was heroic violence, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it depends on what you define as who's the hero, right? Because from
True.
a warped or different perspective, that person who went in and shot up that Christian school probably thought that they were the hero in some way because
Yeah.
their perspective
Yeah.
is warped.
As a statement's been said in a movie or something like that, we're all the heroes of our own story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's not just a quote of a movie. I think somebody famous actually did say that. I just can't remember off the top of my head who that is. But anyways, continuing on with the article here, Walsh would then go on to elaborate on his second point, noting people and especially kids are spending an exorbitant amount of time playing video games. He claims, quote, they aren't having real childhood experiences. They aren't learning how to relate to each other and to the world. They're becoming fat and depressed. They can barely even speak to each other. They can't look you in the eye. They don't stand up straight. Now on that,
This is the part where I pretty much fully agree with him on.
Yeah, I agree with most of it. I agree with most of it. But the question is, can they speak? Can they stand up straight or whatever? Unless you're actually meeting these people, you don't know that part. But they're not
This is
getting
most
real
people
world.
now, though. This
What was that,
actually is
Metal?
especially. I said this is most kids now, though,
Yeah.
especially after the whole pandemic and
Mhm.
like some people basically. It wasn't just a whole year of education that they kind of missed. It was a whole year of socialization that
Right.
they
Yeah.
missed.
yeah, it's like
And for some, it was
their social growth and health were stunted there, in doing that. But I kind of agree with this point too, because I think again since the 80s, over the last 35, 40 years, as a society, we have become more of a sedentary society. We don't really get out as much as we probably used to. Granted, some people would argue we don't have to because, of course, as people moved away from the farms and more into the cities, you didn't have to go out because usually if you were living on a farm, you spent a good portion of the day doing, you weren't in school,
choice.
you were doing chores, so you were active,
So this really ends up begging the question, is it the violence or is it the fact that they are alone, for lack of a better way of saying it, isolated with this violence? Because if you're out with a bunch of other people and you're exposed to this amount of violence or stuff, it affects you differently than,
There's a lot of factors too. Like a lot of these people, you're also often vitamin D deficiency is one of the most common things in modern society because people aren't outside when the sun is up, so their skin isn't processing vitamin D and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're not drinking as much milk probably as well. Milk has vitamin D in it as well. So
yeah, but that's really just a supplement for the sunlight, right? And that's one of the reasons we started putting it in there was to supplement the fact that people were inside more often, like factory workers and stuff. And I don't know if you've ever seen like those old textile factories where like all the windows are basically like the type of window a basement might have, right? Like at the top, you're not getting sunlight in there really.
Yeah. So anyways, continuing on with the article here. He goes on to explain, quote, it's because the screen is a tyrant. It demands obsessive attention, and it usually gets what it demands. There's an undeniable addictive quality to all the stuff, and most of us know that from experience, unquote. What do you guys have to say about that?
Well, that's true of that's true of any media. Radio, newspapers, radio, television, the internet, all the same thing.
That's true of any addiction, and that's what it sort of ends up becoming, an addiction.
Right.
I do think there is, psychologically speaking, there is something slightly more addictive for video games than there are other medias. Like, you could become addicted to any of them. It's easier to become addicted to video games. And I think part of that is the personal agency involved in interacting with video games compared to other mediums. When you are reading a book or a comic, when you're watching a movie or whatever, you can have some interaction with it if you choose to engage with it, but you don't have to. You can't not choose to engage with a video game because you're the one that makes everything go forward.
Yeah, exactly.
The idea of comic books, like for example, when we do the voices of the characters, is that like what you're talking about when you say?
Yeah, you can choose to engage it more. You can sit there on a page too, and you can kind of really examine what's going on in the page. You could bring the reality of the comic into your mind if you really choose to.
Like basically what we do on the historical comic retrospect.
Yeah.
Right?
But also, video games, you don't have that choice. I mean, you can kind of edge out, but you still have to engage with it. You can't not engage with a video game.
Okay, so, quote, it's possible to moderate your own usage. It's possible to moderate your child's usage of the device. It's possible to moderate the kind of content they're exposed to on these devices. But the vast majority of parents fail to impose that kind of moderation, unquote. Wall Snow. Now, on some occasions, in some ways, I kind of have to agree because, like, for people in Rick and my age group, I'd say a lot of people would argue that there were a lot of parents that just simply let the TV raise their kids. You know, there was kind of that idea that's been put out there. You know, how much?
Oh yeah, but we had that here.
Is really true or not? I don't.
We didn't always listen.
That's true.
There was a rule where when we were younger, me and my brothers were not allowed to play video games before noon on days that we were off of school and stuff, just to help moderate it, So
Right.
Just because we didn't listen though doesn't mean that our parents weren't trying to moderate it to some degree.
Right. Yeah. But you were curious about what would happen if we played before noon.
Oh no, I wasn't curious. I usually just didn't care about the consequences for anything that my parents did.
I'm just saying that in most cases you get curious about why they're saying it and want to see what would happen.
Tempting fate, basically.
Exactly. And it's like nowadays, if you go to any playground, you have all these safety things up to the padding that you play on is so soft that it's it feels like a mattress, so you can't fall down and hurt yourself.
No, my playground was made of wood and metal, and you could get splinters on that thing.
Yeah,
in the hot Texas heat too, on the monkey bars.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you learn not to do stuff or whatever, or be more careful when you do.
When you do.
You say that.
Dude.
But then I just do.
It took me breaking my arm to be careful of the surface I'm running on because it didn't register before then.
Yeah, it's like you tell the kid not to touch the burner, right? But the only way he learns not to touch the burner is when he touches it and burns himself.
Right. Then he won't have to worry about him touching it again.
Unless he's a little something wrong with him in the head.
Exactly.
Well, unless he has a masochistic personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think most kids,
All right. So, anyways, getting back to the article here, Walser's commentary is not unheard of and is in line with the catechism of the Catholic Church that teaches, quote, the means of social communication, especially the mass media, in parentheses there, can give rise to a certain passivity among users, making them less than vigilant consumers of what is said or shown. Users should practice moderation and discipline in their approach to the mass media. They will want to form enlightened and correct consciences, the more easily to resist unwholesome influences. Unquote.
Yeah, well, and that also goes for more than like video games. You could just say all these 24-hour news networks where people are watching news
Right.
almost 24/7. It's not quite really all that good for you to watch news that much.
Yeah, I feel that. So it's kind of funny because I remember there was a lot. I've seen the English dub of Yu Yu Hakusho, right?
Mhm.
And Justin Cook, who voices Yusuke, one of the lines he had to deliver in that was talking about how, he watches the news every night, and the stuff he sees on the news, pisses him off.
Right.
Outright says that, because there's a whole bunch of stuff, when they're sitting there talking about all these school shootings, it's liable to piss, it's liable to piss a lot of people off,
True.
It may even have some people thinking about, well, maybe I should go out and shoot these people, just because they shot, it's like, but that's why I try to be careful not to get too involved in the news. That's why I try to focus more on niche stuff, because niche stuff is more fun to talk about. Anyways, continuing on with the article.
All you have to do is answer one question. What genius decided it was okay to run the news 24 hours?
Probably someone in marketing.
I mean, you could argue it probably started with Ted Turner, because I think headline news was one of the first
Headline news, then CNN, and then
headline news, which was of course has always been a property of Turner.
Right.
Before out, of course, CNN and stuff like that, and that's where it all started. All right. Anyways, back to the article here. Pope John Paul II also addressed the role of cinema in 1995, but it can also be applied to other mediums such as video games. He said, quote, "As happens with all the media of social communication, the cinema, as well as having the power and the great merit of contributing to the cultural and human growth of an individual, can oppress freedom, particularly of the most weak. When it distorts the truth and when it presents itself as the mirror of negative types of behavior, using scenes of violence and sex offense to human dignity, and, quote, tending to excite violent emotions to stimulate the attention," unquote, of the viewer. Kind of sounds like the core of the argument that we've been talking about for the last 40 years or so, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that violence on TV will make you more likely to commit violence in real life.
Mhm.
No, we do know from studies that violent media does increase aggression, but aggression does not always equal violence. I mean, sometimes
No.
it can make you more competitive and stuff like that. Sometimes it can even get you motivated to do something. A lot of times, violent media has even helped people get up to do their chores, but it does definitely increase aggression.
Yeah. So here's President Reagan, Nancy Reagan, and Pope John Paul III trip to Italy, visit, and photo op. So in the Library of Congress, this is back in 1981. So there's a picture there with Pope John Paul with President and Mrs. Reagan right there. Right, so let's see. He continued, quote, "The attitude of those who irresponsibly bring about degrading imitative behavior, whose harmful effects can be read about each day in the pages of the newspapers, cannot be defined as free artistic expression. As the gospel reminds us, only in the truth are we made free."
Yeah.
I'm just trying to read more of this because we're already at the 2-hour mark, and I'm trying to speed things along a little bit here. This commentary from Walsh that is clearly aligned with Christian teaching triggered Hambly, who immediately lied that he did not mention Walsh. Now, I went back, and when I initially went back, I didn't know what he was talking about. Obviously, when we went through it again today here, I did see what he was talking about.
I got to correct that article. I'm not sure whether I'd say it's correctly, clearly aligned with Christian teaching, but Catholic teaching for sure.
Yeah. Hambly wrote, quote, "While take Matt, I am not conservative, nor have I ever claimed to be, quote, in smaller quotes, recruiting for them. Comparing our, in smaller quotes, numbers is weird. You were not mentioned in this tweet. It was about, quote, the right. That's why I didn't say, in smaller quotes, Matt Wall seems kind of sensitive and pointless. Okay, I think, and Metal, maybe you mentioned this too earlier. I think here's what the issue was. He did mention Matt in the tweet, but he wasn't necessarily directly talking to Matt.
Yeah,
right?
It wasn't even the first tweet. That was even like a follow-up tweet when other people had already started engaging. There's a lot of the engagement that is missing from this article.
Yeah. Well, I think Matt was trying to make it sound like Jeremy was specifically going after him, and that was even I could tell that wasn't the case. This was about the point where I started realizing sounds like it's getting pretty silly here. But
Yeah. Now, if you want to say George was kind of going directly after Matt, but he was also trying to aim to talk with anyone. He always said Matt Walsh or any conservative commentator with similar views that he was willing to debate them. So he basically had the top of his list, but he was willing to move down to anybody else.
Yeah. As shown above, Hambly did indeed refer to Walsh in a subsequent tweet immediately following this one. Yeah, but I think in this case, John is misinterpreting what Hambly was actually saying there too. Nevertheless, he went on, quote, "I am not interested in infighting, but I am allowed to respond to this nonsense. Best of luck, Matt. Daily Wire is doing great things. Nobody is questioning that, but this feels like a stretch," unquote. Would you guys agree with Jeremy's statement on that, with the quartering statement on that?
Which part of it?
Which part?
Do you think that Matt Walsh may be stretching things a bit here?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think he is still kind of shooting off the cuff a bit. And I think that's a big thing with Matt, and why, like, you can engage with him, but you just can't engage with him super seriously most of the time, because he is just provoking things, and he will come out and tell you his actual point of view, as I think he did earlier. But most of what he's saying is it's just joking and off the cuff, because he's a provocateur, and that's what he does.
Yeah. Catching himself in his own lie, he then I don't think Jeremy was lying there. He may a little confused. Do you guys think the quartering was lying? Do you guys think Jeremy was lying?
No.
No. I think he may have even misspoke, though, because he's another person that doesn't often think about what he says before he says it. Mostly just because he moves fast. It's more careless than anything.
He then corrected, quote, "Okay, it's fair to point out it's not technically infighting, but we do fight for about 85% of the same things in adjacent fighting." Seems kind of silly to me. A lot of the stuff going on here at this point.
Yeah. Well, not that the left doesn't do it, but that's a big problem with the right. Too many times we're fighting over stupid stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Hamley would double down on his lie even when confronted by Walsh, who tweeted, quote, "Come on, man. Stand by your words. You tweeted that at the exact moment that people were digging up old tweets of mine about video games. Everyone knows who you were talking about," unquote.
And he's talking about George Alexopoulos right there because he was the one who dug up the 5-year-old tweet.
Right.
Yeah. What was that? Can you repeat that one more time, Metal?
Oh, so, and Walsh is talking about George Alexopoulos there because he's the one who dug up the 5-year-old tweet.
You know something? You know what it almost sounds like to me from you saying that? I think Matt Walsh is confusing that Alexopoulos guy with Hamley.
Well, I don't think he's confusing it. I think he thinks they're all on the same side when it comes to this stuff. Like not like they're a team or anything, but they're coming at him from the same perspective, standalone complex style.
Yeah.
Hamley retorted, quote, "Matt, you're wrong and still deflecting. Why are you so sensitive? My point was about the right not understanding culture and dismissing things like video games and anime to their own detriment. If you took that personal, that's more of a you issue, bud." Unquote. This does sound like this sounds like a little kindergarten fight.
It does.
It does.
And there's a big difference between the two people involved here, too, right?
Your grandma sitting by the fire. My grandma sitting, your grandma, I'm going to set your flag on fire.
like a big difference.
You guys know that song, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hamley continued to double down on. That part I read.
You didn't watch.
What? Read that part. Hamley continued to double down on his lie when Walsh confronted him again. Quote, "You mentioned me by name. I know your whole gig is to start drama with people with bigger platforms, but I really think you should consider generating content another way. Or at least, if you're going to stay on this strategy, stop with the passive aggressive stuff. It's lame." Unquote. Okay. Now Walsh was the one saying that. Hamley replied, quote, "Matt, I did not mention you. I was clarifying to people who thought it was you, and it was in fact not. There you go, relying on, in smaller quotes, numbers again to try and win an argument. If you want to play that game, I suggest revealing how much DW pays to promote your content per month." Unquote. Oh boy. This is sheer asinine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Chibi Joshua wants to know, what website is this article from? This is Bounding in the Comics, right?
Yeah, Bounding in the Comics, where I'm reading this from.
Which I typically like Bounding into Comics, but they are also known to harp on drama and to stoke the fire quite a bit with some of their articles, as you've probably seen in the past.
Yeah. Let's see. Actually, I guess Chibi Josh, you want to read this one too? I don't know if you read this already, but
I didn't read it out loud. It's like, my parents used to be super strict with screen time when I was a kid. I only got 30 minutes per week to play video games on the Wii. Oof, that's rough. Per week. Sounds like you live in China or something.
Jeez, what could you do in a video game in 30 minutes?
You could do like 3 rounds of Wii bowling.
Yeah, but I'm talking a video. Well, I'm not sure how old Joshua is. We might have said
the Wii. So maybe he did say the Wii, so maybe he was playing like Wii Sports or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
You could do a dungeon in Twilight Princess and then have to wait next week to do more of the story.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, moving on here. Hamley would then share DMs he sent to Walsh back in March about a completely unrelated topic in order to try and defend himself from accusations of clout chasing. He tweeted, quote, I am not playing with this, in smaller quotes, take it to the DMs, on smaller quote, crap and people claiming I am clout chasing. I do just fine. Second of all, I tried to over 2 months ago, 0 replies. Hate to break it to you. Matt Walsh is the one doing this in public for clout, not me. Go whine to him about being a drama queen.
I remember this tweet right here too, because I remember he showed a picture of the DMs, and everybody coming from Matt Walsh's side kind of like don't understand how to read DMs or whatever, and thought Jeremy was the one trying to go to him or whatever. But it's like, no, this is from his perspective. You could see that it was the other person sending the DM.
Yeah. Metal.
Yeah, it took me a really long time to beat the Lego games. It might have been an hour per week. I don't know, but yeah, oof. I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, me too.
The Lego games are harder than advertised. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. Again, this is a pretty lengthy article too. Next, he tweeted, quote, I love how Matt gets to bleat stir and be a drama queen. All he wants, make videos from some high horse and act all offended about a tweet that wasn't even about him, and nobody says he's being a drama queen. My replies, however, are full of people telling me to let it go, but not him, unquote. So, okay, so let me ask you guys, based on what you've seen thus far, and Metal, I know you've been tracking this on Twitter as well. In this case, who do you think is trying to stir this stuff up more? Do you or at all think it is Matt or is it Jeremy?
If I had to pick, I'd have to say Jeremy definitely cares about this more than Matt, but Matt is stirring the pot more.
I think they're both to blame because they're feeding off each other. One says something, then the other just has to say something back. You know, they can't just leave it. You know, say whatever.
So basically, in terms of the question I had, who's stirring it up more? Metal, you're saying it's Matt who's stirring it up more, and then Rick is saying that they're kind of stirring it up equally. Is that?
So I would even somewhat agree with that too. I think like if we're looking at this like a pot of soup, Matt would stop stirring if Jeremy would leave it alone. But because he won't, he's just going to keep stirring the pot faster and faster each time too. It's like, hey, if you're going to keep engaging, I'm going to keep engaging too, back and forth.
And what about you, Terry?
No, he dropped out.
Oh, he did? I didn't even realize that. Huh.
It was literally just now, right before you asked him.
Oh,
Maybe something happened
all
with
right.
that.
Yeah. All right. So continuing on here, then hopefully he'll come back. Let's see. Where were we here? Okay. Oh, all right. I need to move on to the next. After previously taking issue with Walsh touting the number of people he's brought into conservatism, Hambly tweeted, quote, I hope to change conservatives with huge platforms minds about culture like video games and anime. To dismiss it, or in many cases demonize it, is to actively reject millions of potential Republican voters who might not see themselves as quote-unquote conservative. Yeah, I mean, heck. I mean, if you think about it, we have some conservatives. I mean, Rick, you yourself, are probably more of a conservative mindset or a libertarian mindset. We know that Tim's probably more libertarian. Yeah, Chris and Diana, So I mean,
Yeah. I'm
he
not
would,
sure what I am for Canada. I'm certainly not. Well, I'm not conservative. I'm definitely not provincially conservative, and federally I wasn't. But with the guy that we got now, I'm maybe.
he would
I
continue to
might vote
attack
for it.
Walsh. Okay, so according to the author, he would continue to attack Walsh by lying about his position on video games and that he believes playing them causes real world violence. Um, do you guys think that Jeremy is lying?
I don't think he's lying. I think he's just going off of what he's seen. I don't think he really knows, right?
Yeah, he's.
You know,
Yeah, I
See,
think he believes.
I think John Trent here seemed to have a bias towards Matt Walsh here.
oh yeah. But like, I really just think that Jeremy doesn't know, and he's just going off of what he's seen in some tweets and some other people. But like, if you've actually seen the clips or whatever that some of the other quotes came from, it's like I don't think Walsh actually believes that stuff. I think most of it's hyperbolic for the sake of entertainment and humor.
Yeah, I don't. I think Hamley just. I think Hamley believes it. Matt believes it based on whatever he's been told. So he's been misinformed.
Yeah. Hamley tweeted, quote, "Now it all makes sense. Matt is literally a, quote, violent video games cause real world violence, unquote, guy. Ha 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 ha. This has been debunked a zillion times." And we've, of course, talked about that. That's the core of a lot of these censorship arguments, is that right there, right, Metal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do think it is more of a scapegoat.
Their reasoning, right there. However, Walsh's actual argument from the article that Hambley took issue with does not claim that at all. Instead, Walsh writes, quote, "We all know it's pretend. We all know the images are digital. We know you are not a serial killer." That's almost like it almost sounds like he's trying to take a veiled shot at Jeremy there. Let's see. But the fact remains that you still enjoy pretending to kill people. Your favorite recreational activity is to pretend that you are killing people. You probably will never kill a single person in real life, but it's still not good. It's still unhealthy, and it's still pretty disturbing that you find so much joy in simulated death and destruction. Unquote. What do you
Well,
guys have to say to that statement?
well, again, if it's, but he was saying before, this is supposed to be Matt Walsh saying it, I think.
Yeah.
About the heroic violence. There's the Call of Duty ones that a lot of people play or whatever. That's you're a soldier killing. You know, so that would be heroic thing. Or if you're playing a superhero one, again, you're taking out villains. Usually, heroic ones that you don't not supposed to kill them technically.
Well, I think even pull it into a different perspective, right? Because it's a matter of what is fiction and why do we read or enjoy or do anything. Why is it that we can watch a movie?
I'm going to go off camera for a moment, guys. You guys continue the conversation. I'm still listening.
Yeah.
But like, why is it that we can enjoy a movie about a villain, even if we would never do the things that the villain does, right? Because we're looking at it from their perspective. In a game like Call of Duty, even a kid knows that you're playing as the bad guy, right? And there are lessons, there are tales that we learn from the perspective of the villain that even applies to somebody who isn't like that in real life. Could you say it might be unhealthy if you are taking pleasure out of just like randomly killing people? Sure, but maybe that's a part of playing the game that you end up growing over, right? I think most people that engage with the medium end up actually eventually playing the story and experiencing it as a narrative like you would in a book or a movie or something.
Yeah, and I know this isn't probably quite the same thing, but would it be any different than playing cops and robbers as a kid?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be robber, the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
It's maybe not quite as violent, but somebody's played the bad guy, the robbers, you know, or if you play superheroes or whatever, somebody's got to be the villain, unless you're
And
just
a lot of
saving
times too,
cats from trees.
right? Even bringing up like Grand Theft Auto or a game like that where the whole point is that you're playing as a depraved character. A lot of times the enjoyment doesn't even come necessarily in the fact that you're killing somebody, but you're achieving a goal, right? You're accomplishing the mission that was put in front of you.
Yeah.
There are definitely people who have it in unhealthy ways. I'm not trying to excuse that.
Yeah.
I've personally known people who enjoy it in unhealthy ways, but it also has nothing to do with Grand Theft Auto. They would enjoy any game in an unhealthy way. If you gave them The Legend of Zelda, even though like you could argue that you're killing the enemies in Legend of Zelda because you're trying to stop an invasive force, or even in some cases you're trying to survive at the beginning or whatever. There are people who would take pleasure and be like, take that, you wolf, right? The same type of person who might take pleasure in kicking a dog. I don't think the video game's the problem there. It's probably the person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that was crossing my mind as you guys were talking there, I just had to make some lighting adjustments here and stuff like that, so that's why I was off. But I know of a few commentators, a few other YouTube commentators, Hirohi in particular, who would basically just argue, yeah, Walsh seems to be getting a little too into this to where it's like, does he realize that he's talking? Well, I know he said it said that he knows this is all fantasy, but he's making too big about, it's a game, it's not real, but yet he's making this big huge deal about it.
Well, I'm not totally against this side though, because it's like, I don't think people actually think about what isn't real, Like you can say it's not actually happening, but it is virtually happening. And just because something's virtual doesn't mean it's not real to some degree, right?
Yeah.
He is right that it will have some effect on you. It depends on how healthy the person is to begin with. Typically, media doesn't, less like say addictive behavior, right? Like you're not getting proper exercise or anything. Media doesn't really change your mental health, but it can exaggerate the state that somebody's already in.
Yeah. And we got to remember, they do use quote unquote video games, train people how to be pilots and stuff like that too. So
simulators, yeah. Anyways, continuing on with the article here, he continues, quote, I say the same thing about people who love bleak, graphic, torture porn movies. A healthy, well-adjusted, morally aware person would find no enjoyment whatsoever in those films. Not because he thinks they're real, but simply because he has no interest in entering a fantasy world filled with blood and death. I have on that. I actually have to disagree with him a little bit there.
I do too,
because here and even looking at it, even from a Christian perspective, right? In our own humanity, we're all capable. We're all capable. There is evil in us. And
also from the Christian perspective,
that we're saved by the grace of God. We're not.
Your favorite book is filled with blood, death, and violence.
Yeah. Well, the key words there: a healthy, well-adjusted, morally aware person. Well, sometimes we're not all that healthy or well-adjusted.
I think we can argue that as a society, we're not as healthy or morally aware as
there is an argument that engaging in these things virtually instead of actually can help you become more well-adjusted, right? There actually is a value to desensitization, because desensitization doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to act things out, but it also means that you won't be crippled by them either, right?
Okay, here, and to add to your point there, this is the way I look at it too. In that, okay, the argument they often make is that these video games are liable to make you more likely to act on those negative impulses, right? I would actually make the opposite argument. I would think that
Most research would too.
yeah,
They would agree
I
with
would
you.
argue that if anything, with these, they may help. They may, as you pointed out earlier, they may increase that aggression factor. But I think what it more does is I think it gives you a more appropriate outlet for some of those darker impulses.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know Matt Walsh may not like to hear this, but as human beings, we're all capable of some of the most evil, heinous things, including murder.
Yeah, and a good example, combat sports, right? People who friendly and actively engage in like martial arts and other like combat sports, people who actually spar, wrestle with each other and stuff, are far less likely to actually be picking fights with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're getting that angst out of them in a more positive, appropriate manner.
In a very healthy environment where people are less likely to get injured and they're all there with respect for each other and stuff like that. Yeah.
Also, in that sort of environment, you're taught it's not to be used that way too.
Mm-hmm. There's a discipline to it, yeah. And there can be a discipline to video games as well, which is why you need to practice it in moderation. Like you actually shouldn't just spend like, I don't know, 100 hours of nonstop on a game.
Yeah. Right. Well, another thing I would argue, like I was saying, with the martial art, well, sort of with the martial arts stuff, there's the discipline of, you don't use it for that. Well, just like you're taught that with that, if you have the right teaching behind, playing games or whatever, or in life in general, that you don't do this stuff to people in real life. Playing it in a video game isn't going to make you go do it in real life because you've built in the morals. It's right. Just because you're playing that doesn't mean you've lost your morals.
Yeah, and again, one other argument that we kind of danced around a little bit here is parental involvement is also key here.
Yeah.
The more parents are involved in this, the less likely they're going to act out, as well. What is their social and moral education there, So after sharing a personal experience about the film Hostel, Walsh further detailed, quote, "That's one of the major effects the violent video games and movies certainly do have on a person. They feed the twisted part of his brain that delights in ugliness. We all have that in us to some extent, in one form or another. But we should not indulge the instinct. We should not embrace it and fuel it. We bring ourselves into dark places when we do. Even if the dark place does not involve shooting up a school, it's still a dark place, and it is better to be in the on the surface. That's good.
Even on the surface, that's like almost entirely wrong.
However, and this is a big however, and this again to the point I was making earlier. However, if you don't acknowledge the dark side of your persona, it does have a tendency to creep out in ways that are not healthy.
You fool yourself. If you fool yourself, you can fool yourself into believing that, you're not that bad of a person. Well.
Yeah, just ignore the dark side of your persona. The dark side of your humanity.
I was going to say, I totally disagree with what he said there because it's your mindset in playing. Just because you're playing a guy that's shooting up stuff doesn't mean you're getting into that mindset. You're just playing a video game mindset. Which,
if anything, it's giving you an outlet to deal with that. Where
well,
you're not.
it might not even be giving you an outlet for anything. It's just, except for, oh, I'm just here bored. I'm playing something.
Well, you need to incorporate your shadow in some way or form, right? That's actually like the whole principle of like Jungian psychology is the incorporating the shadow, which you can find a lot of that, especially in the Old Testament. Like you can find the roots of that there, incorporation of the shadow. A big deal is that we've been doing this in other medium forever. It's like, hey, you probably shouldn't go watch Macbeth because most of that play is people killing each other brutally, right? That can't be good for you, can it? This piece of classic art that everybody loves now, and nobody would tell you not to engage in it.
No.
Yeah. Okay. He would also point to desensitization. Quote: a person should be horrified by brutality and violence. We should be sickened by it. We should not take pleasure in it, and neither should we be neutral towards it. It is clear that a lot of kids today, a lot of people generally, have a certain numbness, a certain emptiness inside of them. They do not recoil at evil. They do not feel disgust at disgusting things. This is at least partly because they spend so much of their time in a disgusting virtual world, pretending to do disgusting things for fun. Again,
I disagree with that.
Again, it goes back to the idea acknowledging the dark side of your persona, not.
Yeah, I think there's more to it than that because people are desensitized to the whole horrible things, not probably because horrible things have been done to them or other things.
I got a different perspective on this, right? Again, this goes back to the problem with parents and stuff like that. I don't know if you've ever met little kids, if you've ever spent a long amount of time with little kids. Little kids are inherently violent and disgusting and do crazy, violent, and disgusting things, and that needs to be socialized out of them. If you just leave them alone with these things, they're going to naturally flock to it because this is the way they already are. Humans start out as monsters, as animals, and we're socialized into a group. So again,
Lord of the Flies.
This goes back to the parents ultimately, and or not just the parents, because families are supposed to be a larger structure than just the parents. It comes to not having a healthy social structure in general.
Yeah, I think of Lord of the Flies, the book Lord of the Flies.
Yeah. Kids will kill bugs for no reason. I mean, bugs are disgusting, but still, they will eat their own boogers. They will jump on each other and start wrestling and punching each other. And it's not just boys. Young girls do it too. They kind of age out of that anyway. Hormones take care of it for that half of the species. But especially for boys, you kind of need to socialize that out of them. And it's just like, no, this is how people are in this with the virtual world. You need to just
I don't think Matt understands human nature too much.
Well, my guess is Matt probably has never spent any time thinking about the human condition too much. As I said, he seems to have a very puritanical point of view. He never really thought about the. Now he would probably make the argument, well, Christians aren't supposed to be thinking humanistically, but I think there is a key element in
Well, I think he's not even looking at it Christianly, because if you have a Judeo-Christian viewpoint of the world, sin and disorder is the default state of the world, and you have to rise above that.
Yeah.
All right, so wow, we're coming up. We're already past 2.5 hours. It's going to be a long one tonight. Clearly still triggered by Walsh, Hambly then took issue with another of his articles regarding yoga, an opinion which is also in line with Christian teaching. Hambly tweeted, quote, boycott yoga Christians, lest you stretch and bend yourself into an eternity in hell. Oh, God. This is kind of a...
And I think Hamley's being a bit doing that tongue in cheek. No.
Yeah, juvenile. Hambly would also upload a video where he would continue to double down on his lie that he wasn't talking about Walsh. He attempted to explain his tweet directly referencing Walsh, saying, quote, was I talking about Matt? No. In fact, the following tweet was in response to all the people in reply saying, are you talking about Matt Walsh? And I said, quote, Matt's not the only guy saying it. There was some other moron who tweeted, in smaller quotes, anime is for pedophiles, or something the other day. So this thread was absolutely not about Matt Walsh. Okay, so a couple points I want to bring up. First off, yeah, I think again, I don't think Jeremy was as much directly going at Matt. He was referencing Matt based on, the point you made, Metal, some of those other tweets. Now, as for this other part where and yes, I know there are people who have tried to make the argument, well, anime is for pedophiles. Okay. The argument, and not that we need to get, this would be a very tricky discussion to have anyways, so I just want to minimize it here, not to get too deep into this aspect of it, but that it's a different culture entirely. Okay. What Japan views as an adult, or how they view age of consent, is different from what the West would view as age of consent. And
yeah.
That's the only thing I want to say. I don't want to get into I think those of us here might, when we think a little bit more thoroughly through it, we probably can reason it out better. But, but I know that if us laymen start talking about it, people are going to start saying that we're like maps or whatever, So.
Yeah, it's just different, for lack of a better way of saying it, world views. Each country has a world view of sorts, so on different topics or whatever.
Except it literally was about Matt Walsh, given he referenced him by name, and then noted it reflected Walsh's views. But he wasn't it wasn't quite as directly I think what Matt and this author John are doing is they're basically trying to say that Jeremy was directly going after Matt or was directly attacking Matt, and that's not what he was doing. Would you agree with that sentiment, Metal?
Sorry. Somebody was talking to me off mic. Could you repeat what you said real quick? Just the very end.
I was saying that the writer of this article and Matt seem to at least be trying to make people believe is that Jeremy was directly going after Matt. He was directly attacking him. And
yeah, so it's the temporal flow, right? Linear time. It didn't start that way. It became that way, but that's also because Matt engaged. And of course, when somebody engages, everything gets directed. But even when he mentioned him at first, that was a reply to other people in Matt's audience who were even talking about the thing where they were assuming the first tweet was about Matt, right? And then he's like, no, it wasn't directly about Matt Walsh. And that's when he mentioned him by name. And then that's when Walsh comes in, and there's this flow of time Time happens chronologically, and then people are like, let's pick. This is what happened when. No, that's not what happened when. We can go backwards and look.
Yeah.
So how much longer is this article?
I'm thinking we're almost done. It looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a lengthy article here. Let's see. I think I read. So, well, I'll just start. Except it literally was about Matt, given he
So we read that.
Yeah, okay. As expected, Hambly would also double down throughout the video on everything he previously tweeted. Walsh's criticisms of video games are nuanced, and there is some merit to them. We should not become slaves to our hobbies. They should be hobbies. His arguments about violence are also valid, but again, there is also nuance to it.
Yeah. Well, I got a question. What about people who make video games? Their life's work, sort of like like people that play them on like YouTube and stuff like that to get views, to get money. They're not hobbies to them.
Mm-hmm. There's a difference between logging into a game and taking joy in the violence and death and competing against other people. Solving problems, enjoying a well-told story, and the numerous other benefits that video games can and do offer, these nuances are something that Hambly does not engage with at all. Rather, he resorts to lying about quote-unquote gotcha moments on Twitter. And again, I think there's a condition here. We don't think he's lying. He may just be.
Yeah, but I would agree that he's not actually engaging with the arguments. But I don't think he actually knows most of the arguments, because most of the arguments weren't actually in direct tweets to him. A lot of them come from quotes from Walsh's show. And how can you engage directly with somebody's arguments if they're not in your face, right? Like you expect in Twitter, where you have a limited amount of characters to talk to each other, that everybody involved in a heated conversation is going to go spend like hours researching each other's opinions and stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't think either of them is doing any sort of research.
Yeah, no, neither.
Well, why do you think when I read this the other day, I just stopped halfway through? I just, on my own, I didn't want to I just felt like this just seems like this whole thing. I mean, even the and John. Normally, I'm pretty cool about John Trent's work here, but I think getting into this is just kind of stupid.
Yeah, just doing an article about. It must have been a slow news day.
Yeah.
No, drama gets the clicks. Even on a fast news day, you'd want something like this.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, but if it's not something he normally does.
Yeah. Indeed, Hambly's tweets seemingly don't even care about Walsh's actual arguments about video games. In fact, his last criticism is not even about video games at all, but is about the Christian warning of practicing yoga, a pagan ritual, and that appears to be where Hambly's true ire with Walsh is his Christianity.
Yes,
I don't.
And he was making a point by saying that stuff sarcastically.
Yeah, I don't. First off, I don't. Even though he doesn't, I don't think Quartering identifies either as a conservative or a Christian. But
yeah, he's
I don't think he has any. I don't think he. Oh, what was that, Metal?
I said he's kind of a centrist in some ways, leaning a little more towards that libertarian side of things than not. He's definitely a capitalist because he runs his own business and things like that. I've watched enough of Jeremy's stuff that I have like a basis understanding of his views, but he would only be de facto right because he's not left, right? He wouldn't consider himself right or conservative.
Right. What do you make of Hambly getting triggered about Matt Walsh and his opinions on video games? Well,
I think they both got triggered.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if triggered is really the right word for it though, because I mean, um, I think if anything, they kind of triggered each other. It seems like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
So, how did you guys like that article? That long.
I wouldn't say I like it much at all.
me either.
Yeah, that whole situation just seems stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and I blame George.
it was
I
boring
completely
as
blame
But
George.
as Tug would say, sometimes it's okay to laugh at the stupid, right?
yeah. The article is boring as hell, but we talked about it. So who's the stupider, us or them?
Well, I don't know. I thought it was still worth talking about, just to look
Yeah,
at, just to
yeah,
just to be aware of it. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
you have these two big names going at each other. So as of course as Metal pointed out, drama seems to sell. So when you got these two big names in YouTube butting heads, it does. It is going to spark interest, and that's the reason we covered it.
yeah.
But ultimately, the whole situation just sounds incredibly stupid on both ends,
Yeah,
right?
I actually, my favorite thing to come out of it was instead Shadowversity did a response video, and his was more of like, I'm just going to recommend you some anime with like good lessons that can be learned from it. Here's some like good morals and stuff like Rurouni Kenshin and things. I'm like that's a good response. Ignore the drama, give people the answer.
Yeah, I mean, and it also depends upon your taste. I mean, I watch all kinds of anime, including slice of life. And yes, I like watching slice of life anime. I like watching harem anime. I'll admit that.
Oh, I can. Depends on
I
it,
mean,
but I can.
there are and some of them. Some of the harem anime. There are certain social aspects to it that are enjoyable to watch. Yeah, sometimes you kind of wish for the social, not maybe not necessarily the individual, the people themselves per se, but just a social environment you may wish for. Because particularly in a lot of the slice of life stuff and a lot of the harem anime, you do have out west here what would be considered underage characters. But you know, but just because you watch it doesn't make you a map or anything like that. Depending upon what you take from it.
Oh, I kind of usually only like it when the actual guy in the harem anime is like the punching bag or like the joke of the show. Like Tenchi Muyo is a pretty good example of that one.
Yeah. Let's see. I think Love Hina is another one that's kind of like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're coming up on 3 hours here. Longer than about an hour longer than I expected. So we're gonna wrap up here. I'm gonna just real quickly go through this day in each history, then this weekend in each history, then we'll wrap things up here. So let me just take a quick peek here. 7th, May 6th, and this one's from May 7th as well. Okay, so first off, going back to yesterday, going back 30 years ago yesterday to 1993. On yesterday's date, 30 years ago today, it's time for us to take a look back at this weekend in each history. On yesterday's date, 30 years ago, the Simpsons episode Margin Chains, the 21st and penultimate episode of the fourth season, premiered on yesterday's date 30 years ago. It saw Marge getting arrested for shoplifting after forgetting to pay for an item at the Quickie Mart, and while she's imprisoned for 30 days, it causes the town bake sale to suffer to where they had to settle for a statue of Jimmy Carter instead of Abraham Lincoln. So
Oh
30
boy!
I know this episode. I saw it not too long ago. It
Oh
came back
boy!
then.
I could not believe that Abu would have her charged and go to jail for such a thing.
Oh, I completely believe it.
Yeah, margin sheet.
Apu is a great believer in justice.
Yeah, but if she did it by accident, he seems to be a guy that could be merciful at times.
No.
Anyways, now the next piece of niche history from yesterday, going back 10 years ago yesterday, on yesterday's date, 10 years ago today, the WWE held its Monday Night Raw event from the Roanoke Civic Center in Roanoke, Virginia. The event saw the main event saw Ryback defeat Kane in 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Sheamus defeated Wade Barrett. The Funkadactyls, Carmen and Naomi. Naomi, who just recently made her Impact Wrestling debut, has under her real name Trinity, and Caitlyn defeated AJ Lee and the Bella Twins. Saw the Shield of Dean Ambrose, aka AEW's John Moxley, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins defeat Kofi Kingston and the Usos. Alberto Del Rio defeated Dolph Ziggler. Randy Orton opened the show by defeating Damian Sandow. So on yesterday's date, 10 years ago was all right, I did put that up. So that was 10 years ago yesterday. So now getting on to today's date and going back 30 years ago today. On this date 30 years ago today, the Nippon Animation anime Dragon League, which was a soccer sports anime, premiered in Japan on this date 30 years ago today. 30 years ago today, Dragon League from Nippon Animation. Debuted, of course, on Nippon TV in Japan. So, which goes to show you they have animes for all kinds of things, including sports.
Actually, sports anime is probably the single most popular genre if it's not slice of life. Those two are pretty close to each other. There's a lot more sports anime than there is even like shonen battle stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know there's been a few famous. This one maybe not as famous, but I know probably one of the more famous soccer animes is Captain Tsubasa.
Yeah.
One was,
I remember Prince of Tennis was like super popular at one point.
that was a tennis related one. Yeah, that one lasted for like I think 3 or 4 years, believe it or not. Albeit they only dubbed like the first couple of years, I believe.
Yeah. Or Slam Dunk
anyways,
for basketball is another big one.
Yeah. So going back 20 years ago today, on this date 20 years ago today, the first issue of Authority from DC's Wildstorm imprint went on sale on this date back 20 years ago today. The story was Reality Incorporated Episode 1, written by Robert Morrison, penciled by Dwayne Turner. Sal Regla did the inking. It was lettered by Richard Starkings and Jason Levine, and then colored by David Barron. So on this date 20 years ago today, the first issue of Authority from DC's Wildstorm imprint went on sale.
That's so sad. They're going to ruin it with the live action coming out.
Yeah. Oh, have you read that story before?
Oh, I actually don't care for the Authority. I tried to get into it, but like I know a lot of people who like it. I'm like, okay, I don't like it, but I could see why you like it, and they're just going to slaughter it with the planned Authority film.
All right. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. If you guys can stick around for just a couple minutes for post show after we close out here. So I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I know we went kind of long tonight. Hope you got some enjoyment out of what we talked about. And this
Any
Friday,
comments in the comments?
what was that?
I said, any more comments in the chat or?
No, the last one was Chibi responding to you, there, Rick.
Oh, let's say.
It's just him quoting you saying, "I'm not sure what I am, Rick Piper."
Yeah. So, anyways, I thank everybody for being here. We'll be back tomorrow night, of course, with more Needs News. And of course, Metal, you're with me this week.
Yeah, apparently I am. I forgot.
Yeah, and I even reminded you even earlier on too. I'll have this Friday for our historical comics retrospect. I will have Metal with me. We'll be looking over books that went on sale in October 1939 from Centaur Comics, which of course will include Amazing Men comics, among other things. With that, and we actually did have some, I guess, GB Joshua here. Just we need to read Rick a bedtime story. Anyways, guys, I thank y'all for being here. I thank you for sticking around for the great length of time we were. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye-bye.